She was just a humble waitress trying to save her sick sister. He was a ruthless billionaire who didn't believe in love. But one accident, one spilled coffee, led to a forced engagement neither of them wanted. What started as a cold arrangement slowly turned into something deeper, until one cruel sentence shattered it all. She walked away, and he finally realized what he'd lost. Will his love be enough to win her back? You won't believe how this emotional journey ends. Where are you watching from today? Let us know in the comments, and don't forget to subscribe for more unforgettable stories. The morning city buzzed with its usual rhythm, honking cars, shouting vendors, footsteps beating against the pavement like a hurried symphony. Maya Collins weaved through it all on her worn-out bicycle, a tray balanced in her front basket carrying 2 steaming cups of caramel mocha from Brewhaven, the cozy alleyway cafe where she worked. Her brown hair was hastily tied up in a loose bun, a few rebellious strands dancing in the breeze. She didn't have time to look up at the pale winter sun or admire the snow-dusted rooftops. She was already running late. Every minute mattered, especially when your paycheck paid for your sister's daily hospital medication. Chloe was 13, diagnosed with an immune disorder so rare that doctors flew in from across the country to monitor her case. And Maya, barely 24, had long taken the role of sister, mother, nurse, and breadwinner. Turning onto West Haven Avenue, Maya pedaled harder. She had to deliver to the high-rise business tower on 5th before 10. She didn't see the sleek black Audi idling just ahead, not until it was too late. Her front tire wobbled as her foot slipped on the pedal, the bike veering just enough to send her crashing into the man standing near the car. Her tray launched forward, and in an almost cinematic arc, both cups of coffee collided with the pristine white suit of a man holding his phone to his ear. The gasp caught in her throat before the apologies even formed. "Oh my God, I'm so sorry," she blurted out, scrambling off the bike, reaching for napkins in her back pocket. "I didn't see you. Are you okay? I'll pay for the dry cleaning, I swear." The man didn't speak at first. He just looked down at the brown stain blooming across his tailored jacket, then slowly raised his gaze to her. Cold blue eyes, sharp jawline, neatly styled black hair. He looked like he had walked out of a Vogue ad, and he was furious. Maya recognized him now. Damian Wolf, CEO of Wolf and Orion Developments, one of the youngest billionaires in the country. She'd seen his face in newspapers her customers left behind. "Is this some new marketing trick?" His voice was sharp as ice, cutting through the morning air. "Because if you think this will get my attention, you're tragically mistaken." Maya blinked. "Excuse me?" Her hands froze mid-wipe. Did he just accuse her of staging this? Damian cocked his head, the corners of his mouth tugging into a cold, bemused smirk. "I've had women try all kinds of ways to get close to me. Spilling coffee, however, is a first." She straightened up, despite barely reaching his shoulder, her cheeks flushed from embarrassment and growing anger. "You think everyone's desperate to impress you?" she shot back. "I'm just trying to do my job, not throw myself at some suit with a superiority complex." A few passers-by slowed down, sensing drama. Damian raised a brow, clearly not used to being spoken to this way. "Then perhaps next time try watching where you're going. You've cost me an hour and a jacket," he snapped. "A jacket can be cleaned. I might lose my job over this," she retorted, voice cracking slightly, but her eyes fierce. "So maybe think twice before calling yourself the victim." For a brief second, his expression shifted. Something flickered beneath the cold exterior. Curiosity? Amusement? Whatever it was, he turned without another word, stepping into the car as the driver pulled away. Maya stood there fuming, a damp napkin still in her hand, heart racing. She muttered under her breath, "What a jerk." That night, she recounted the story to Chloe at the hospital, mimicking Damian's tone and expressions until her sister giggled between coughs. "He probably never had to work a day in his life," Maya said, brushing hair from Chloe's forehead. "People like that don't see the world like we do." But across the city, high above in a corner office with floor-to-ceiling glass windows, Damian Wolf stood staring at the skyline. He told himself it was just a meaningless incident. But something about the fire in that girl's eyes, like she had nothing, yet feared nothing, refused to leave his mind. The lobby of the Blue Orchid Hotel gleamed under crystal chandeliers, every polished tile reflecting the opulence of the city's most prestigious charity gala. Velvet ropes separated the press from the guests, whose designer gowns and tuxedos glided across the marbled floors like they belonged to another world entirely. Maya Collins stood near the service entrance, hidden behind a partition wall, adjusting the hem of a black cocktail dress she'd borrowed from a friend. It hugged her frame awkwardly, clearly not tailored for her petite figure, and the heels pinched her toes with every step. But this wasn't about appearances. This was about Chloe. The hospital organizing tonight's gala was hoping for donations to support pediatric care, and Maya had volunteered to serve drinks, hoping she could catch the ear or heart of someone generous enough to help cover her sister's next round of treatment. Even if it meant blending into a crowd that didn't see her. Across the hall, Damian Wolfe stood in a sea of tailored suits, his sharp silhouette unmistakable. He wasn't here for charity. He never was. He attended for optics, for the board, the brand, and more importantly for his grandfather, Alaric Wolfe, who sat at the head table like a lion surveying his pride. Alaric was a man who didn't speak unless necessary, but when he did, people listened. And for weeks now, his singular obsession had been Damian's future, not in business, but in marriage. "I won't live forever, Damian," he had warned days ago, his voice gravely but commanding. "It's time you settled down. A wolf without an heir is a house with no foundation." Damian had rolled his eyes. Love, in his world, was a transaction. Like stocks, marriages were just mergers with better marketing. The night was progressing predictably until a sudden gust from the open balcony doors knocked over one of the centerpieces. A candle tipped, its flame licking the edge of a linen tablecloth. Within seconds, smoke curled upward, and guests began to panic. Maya, carrying a tray of champagne flutes, dropped it instinctively and rushed forward. While others stood frozen, she grabbed her blazer, smothering the flames before hotel staff could react. The crowd murmured in confusion and awe, some clapping, others staring. Maya, flushed and winded, barely had time to catch her breath when something glittering under the scorched tablecloth caught her eye. A ring, heavy and gold, with an eagle crest etched into its surface. It looked expensive, far more than any costume jewelry. She bent down and picked it up carefully, just as a voice behind her made her freeze. "What are you holding, young lady?" She turned to find an older man in a tailored three-piece suit, a cane in one hand and piercing eyes locked on hers. "Alaric Wolfe. I found this," she said quietly, holding the ring up. His eyes widened, then softened with something dangerously close to delight. "The Wolfe family ring," he said, his voice rising. "So this is fate's hand at work." Before Maya could correct him, Damian appeared, having pushed through the crowd. He saw the ring in her hand, the crowd gathering, the camera phones lifting. "Grandfather, wait." "Nonsense," Alaric boomed, cutting him off. "You always were stubborn, Damian, but fate makes no mistakes. She holds the family ring, she is your chosen." Maya blinked. "No, sir, it's not. This isn't what you think." The elder Wolfe waved away her protest like a fly. "I haven't seen Damian look twice at anyone in years. The ring chose her. Everyone, a toast to my grandson and his fiancée." Applause erupted like thunder. Maya stood frozen. Damian looked cornered. And the moment stretched into a surreal nightmare. She turned to him, her voice low and furious. "Say something. Fix this." But Damian, with his grandfather's eyes burning into him and his empire's image at stake, said the unthinkable. "She's my bride-to-be." The words hit her like a slap. Her mouth fell open, heart pounding in her ears. Damian leaned in, voice cold and controlled. "Stay quiet unless you want to cause a scene. Trust me, you don't." She should have screamed, should have walked away. But she stood there, trapped by the pressure, the people, the power swirling around her. Alaric stepped forward and handed the ring to Damian. "Put it on her finger, as tradition demands." Jaw clenched, Damian slid the ring onto her hand. The crowd roared again. Maya stared down at the gold circling her finger, her mind screaming. A waitress from Brewhaven had just become engaged to a billionaire. By mistake, by force, by fate's twisted hand. And no one seemed to care that she was drowning. The next morning, gray clouds draped over the city like a heavy curtain, mirroring Maya's mood as she dragged herself into Brewhaven. The coffee shop's usual warmth felt muted, its familiar scent of roasted beans and cinnamon offering no comfort. She'd barely slept. The memory of last night, The ring, the applause, Damien's cold declaration, looped through her mind like a haunting dream. But it wasn't a dream. Her fingers still bore the golden weight of that heirloom, now tucked into her coat pocket, too scared to wear it, too scared to throw it away. The bell over the shop door chimed, and Maya turned, expecting a customer. Instead, Damien Wolf stood in the doorway, tall and intimidating in a dark gray coat, damp from the morning drizzle. His eyes found hers immediately, and without a word, he strode across the shop to the counter. "We need to talk," he said flatly. "I'm working," she snapped, voice sharper than she intended. Her coworkers subtly disappeared into the storeroom. Damien didn't blink. 5 minutes. Against her better judgment, Maya followed him to the quiet back corner, crossing her arms tightly. "I'll get to the point," Damien began, sliding a folded document onto the table. "My grandfather is over the moon. He wants us married immediately. You and I both know this engagement was a mistake, but if you agree to go through with it, for a few months, I'll pay for your sister's treatment in full. All of it." Maya's jaw dropped. "Are you kidding me?" she hissed. "You think you can buy my life like you buy buildings?" "I'm offering a deal," he said coolly. "You help me, I help you, that's all. Marry you? Just to save face for your family? Are you that soulless?" Her voice trembled with fury. "No, absolutely not. Go fix your mess some other way." She stormed away before he could respond, slamming through the kitchen doors and leaving him alone with the untouched contract. But the nightmare only deepened. The next morning, Maya was called into a private room at the hospital. The head physician sat across from her with a grave expression. "I'm afraid we've hit a funding issue," he said. "The charity that promised to sponsor Chloe's surgery has withdrawn. Unless payment is arranged privately, we'll have to postpone." Maya's heart dropped. "But you told me last week everything was covered." "I'm truly sorry. These decisions are above me." She stumbled out of the hospital in a daze, called every organization she knew, knocked on doors, begged for help, but nothing. No one had an answer. That night, she sat by Chloe's bed and whispered, "I'll find a way. I always do." But her voice sounded hollow, even to herself. The next day, the bell above Brewhaven rang again, and there he was, Damien. Dry this time, with that same impenetrable gaze and a manila envelope in hand. Maya didn't wait for him to speak. "What now?" she snapped. He placed the envelope on the counter. "That's the revised contract. Sign it, and Chloe gets the surgery. Immediately." Her hands shook as she opened it. Inside, stamped with King General Hospital and Wolf and Orion seal, was proof that he controlled the entire arrangement. Her sister's life, bartered like a business deal. "You did this," she whispered. "You had them pull the funding, didn't you?" "I leveraged what I had to get what I needed," he replied without shame. "Agree and she lives, refuse and she waits, your choice." "You're a monster," she spat, tears burning her eyes. "You'd really hold a sick child hostage just to fix your PR?" "I'm giving you an out," he said, voice like steel. "Say yes, and you control the timeline. You walk away in 6 months with your sister healthy and no debt." Maya wanted to throw the contract in his face, but Chloe's face flashed in her mind, fragile, fading. Her fury collapsed under the weight of helplessness. "Fine," she said, through clenched teeth. "I'll marry you, but you'll regret dragging me into your hell." He didn't react. "The wedding's in 3 days." 3 days later, under the glittering chandeliers of the Blue Orchid's main ballroom, Maya Collins became Mrs. Damien Wolf. Her dress shimmered with Parisian lace, her lips formed a smile for the cameras, but her heart was stone. When Damien slipped the ring onto her finger, he didn't meet her eyes. And when the ceremony ended, he leaned close and whispered, "Don't touch my things, stay out of my way." Then he walked ahead, leaving her to follow. Alone, trapped but not broken. Not yet. Maya stood in front of the floor-to-ceiling windows of the Wolf penthouse, watching the city twinkle beneath a violet sky. It had been 3 months since the wedding, 3 long months of cold silences, separate dinners, and locked doors. Damien had kept his word. Chloe's surgery had gone forward, and her condition was steadily improving, but he had given nothing of himself. They lived like strangers in a palace, moving around each other like shadows. At first she tried to ignore him, to focus on work and her sister's recovery. But the nights were lonely, and her pride, though bruised, couldn't stop her from hoping, just a little, that he'd change. That he'd see her as more than a transaction. She found solace in her routines, tending the rooftop garden she'd revived, humming while she cooked, leaving small meals on the table out of habit. Damien never acknowledged them, but the plates were always empty the next morning. In return, he sometimes left bags of fruit or a bouquet of lilies with a curt note, extra from the office. She never thanked him aloud, but she placed the flowers in vases and told herself it meant nothing. They were coexisting, nothing more. Until the night of the Arcadia Gala. Damien had insisted she attend. "My grandfather expects you there," he'd said, barely glancing at her. "Wear something appropriate." She chose a simple emerald green gown, elegant, modest. Her reflection in the mirror startled her. She looked like someone else, someone composed, someone who didn't feel invisible in her own marriage. At the gala, they arrived arm in arm but spoke little. The room buzzed with laughter and champagne, chandeliers casting gold light over silk and diamonds. Maya lingered near the refreshments, sipping orange juice, her eyes scanning the sea of strangers. She felt like a decorative piece, pretty, silent, forgettable. Then she heard it. Damien's voice. He was a few feet away, laughing softly with a group of investors. A tall man with slicked-back hair clapped him on the shoulder and asked, "So what's the story with the wife? Real or PR?" Damien chuckled, his voice like steel wrapped in velvet. "Let's just say she looks good on paper, but she doesn't belong in my world. It's all for the old man." Maya's heart stopped. Her hand trembled, spilling juice onto the marble floor. She didn't hear the rest, didn't want to. The words repeated in her mind like poison. She doesn't belong. It's all for show. Her throat tightened. She turned and slipped out the back doors, heels clicking against stone until she reached the garden terrace. The night was brisk, the wind tugging at her dress, but she didn't feel the cold. Her eyes stung as she whispered to herself, "I'm not a pawn in your game, Damien Wolf." Tears rolled silently down her cheeks, but she let them fall. No one was watching now. She returned to the penthouse long after he had gone to bed. Quietly, methodically, she packed a small bag, slipped the ring into a velvet pouch, and left a note on his desk. "I'm not your decoration. I'm not your problem to fix. I won't be used. Goodbye." She didn't slam the door. She didn't cry again. She simply walked away. Damien awoke to silence. The scent of fresh toast was gone. The faint humming from the kitchen, gone. The garden had no new flowers. Her bedroom door stood open, her closet half empty. The note sat on his desk, heavy in its simplicity. He stared at it for a long time, heart pounding in a way he couldn't explain. He called her, no answer. Checked the hospital. She hadn't been there. He waited until nightfall, pretending it didn't matter. But the next morning, he found himself hovering near the kitchen, staring at the empty table. He snapped. He drove through the city, visiting every place she had mentioned in passing, called every contact. But Maya had vanished, and with her the warmth he hadn't realized he'd begun to crave. By the time he returned home, rain was falling hard against the windows. He walked into the kitchen and saw her old apron, singed from cooking, still hanging on the hook. He grabbed it, held it to his chest, and sat down on the cold tile floor. For the first time in years, Damien Wolf felt something break inside. And this time, there was no fixing it with contracts or control. Rain lashed against the windshield as Damien drove through unfamiliar streets, wipers slashing at the torrent in frantic rhythm. He hadn't eaten in a day, hadn't slept in 2. His jaw was clenched, eyes bloodshot, hands gripping the steering wheel as if it were the only thing keeping him from falling apart. Maya's note lay on the passenger seat, its words branded into his brain. "I won't be used. Goodbye." She had left, and it was his fault. Every cruel word, every cold silence, every missed opportunity to show her she mattered, it all played in his mind like punishment. He had searched every corner of the city. Brewhaven, Chloe's hospital, her old apartment, nothing. But then he remembered something, a detail buried in a long-forgotten conversation. Maya had once mentioned a coastal town 2 hours away, where she and Chloe had spent summers with their grandmother. A sleepy place with a diner called the Salt Spoon and a garden that bloomed wildflowers in spring. It was a long shot, but it was all he had left. By the time he arrived, dawn was beginning to crack over the sea. The town was quiet, wrapped in mist. He spotted the diner easily, a pale blue building with fogged windows and a hand-painted sign. Inside, behind the counter, stood Maya. Her hair was tied back in a loose braid, and she wore a green apron. She looked thinner, more tired, but still radiated that quiet strength that had always both unnerved and enchanted him. Damien didn't enter right away. He sat in his car, watching her wipe down a table, laugh softly with a customer. She looked peaceful, and he was terrified to break it, but he couldn't walk away. He stepped into the diner. A bell rang softly overhead. Maya looked up and froze. Her smile vanished. "What are you doing here?" she asked, her voice low and guarded. He didn't answer right away. Then, in front of the few patrons and the wide-eyed waitress, Damien dropped to his knees on the diner floor. "I'm sorry," he said, his voice raw. "I don't deserve you. I never did. But I love you, and I can't go back to that empty world without you." The silence was suffocating. Maya's hands clenched at her sides. Her eyes shimmered, not with hope, but with the remnants of pain he'd caused. "You said I didn't belong in your world," she said quietly. "You made me feel like trash. And now you think one apology erases that?" Damien's gaze dropped. "No," he said. "I don't expect it to. But I'm not leaving, not until I prove I've changed." Maya turned away. "You can't just decide to change now that you're lonely." "I didn't come here for comfort," he said, rising slowly. "I came here to earn the right to be near you, even if it takes a lifetime." She said nothing, just walked into the kitchen and didn't look back. But Damien stayed. The next morning, he returned, not with roses but in jeans and a plain shirt. He offered to help, wash dishes, clean tables, take out trash. He worked in silence. His soft hands soon blistered from scrubbing pans. Maya ignored him at first. She didn't speak, didn't smile, but she watched. He didn't complain, didn't grandstand, just worked. Then came Tom. Tall, warm-eyed, and gentle-voiced, Tom was the town's local mechanic, and he clearly adored Maya. He brought her baskets of apples, fixed a leaky pipe in the diner's kitchen, told her she could stay as long as she wanted. Damien watched from a distance as Tom made her laugh, really laugh. And for the first time, Damien felt a pain deeper than guilt. It was fear. Fear of losing her not to bitterness, but to someone better. But he didn't run. He stayed. When Maya caught a fever from overwork, Damien rushed through a storm to get her medicine. He left it on the porch with a note, "Please rest. You don't have to do everything alone." When she struggled with the old backyard garden, he bought tools and seeds and quietly started digging beside her. She frowned. "You don't have to do this." "I know," he replied. "I want to." Slowly, her walls began to crack. Not fall, but crack. She started offering small instructions when he worked beside her, corrected his clumsy peeling, nodded when he got the soup right. One night, as they sat beneath the stars, she finally asked, "Why are you really here?" He looked at her, not like a trophy, not like a puzzle, but like the answer to a question he'd never dared ask. "Because you're my world now, Maya, and I'd rather be poor in yours than rich in mine without you." She didn't reply, but she didn't walk away either. And that was enough, for now. Sometimes love doesn't begin with fireworks or fairy tales. Sometimes it begins with conflict, misunderstanding, and pain, and grows quietly through sacrifice, humility, and the willingness to change. Damien and Maya's story reminds us that love is not about perfection, but about persistence. It's about showing up every single day with the intent to be better, for yourself and for the one you love. True love requires more than words. It demands action, consistency, and the courage to admit when we've been wrong. Damien had everything money could buy, but it meant nothing without someone to share life's quiet moments with. Maya, despite her hardship, never lost her integrity or compassion. In the end, it wasn't grand gestures that healed their wounds, but the simple, sincere efforts, the peeling of potatoes, the tending of a garden, the act of staying. We all make mistakes, but what we choose to do after the mistake, that's where real love and growth begin. If this story has touched your heart, take a moment to reflect on your own relationships. Are there fences to mend, apologies left unsaid, or small gestures you can offer that might mean the world to someone else? We'd love to hear from you. Where are you watching from today? Drop your country or city in the comments below. And if you believe in second chances, healing through love, and stories that remind us what really matters, don't forget to subscribe to our channel. More heartfelt stories are waiting to be told, and we'd be honored to share them with you.